on Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana as he presents his maiden mid-term budget speech. The minister is expected, among other things, to give direction about the social relief of distress grant and the proposed family grant. Government's fiscal consolidation commitments are expected to be a focal point despite a recent surge in commodity prices that have boosted tax revenue. Here to talk to me about what to expect from the minister's speech on Thursday is Economist Sifiso Skenjana. Sifiso, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight. Well, of course, as eyes are on the finance minister, many are waiting to hear how the South African economy has fared since the start of the year with the July unrest, and whether or not there is any hope of some kind of improvement in the economy which would indicate whether we can expand the social safety net. What is your take? I mean, are we likely to hear any good news?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the incumbent minister's previous stance, at least in previous portfolios, has tended to be pro-development and pro-social development. And I think it's going to be quite interesting to see the kind of approach he takes in a constrained fiscal environment. And so I think he's really going to have some interesting complexity to really deal with there. I think one of the things that are going to come out as a victory is the extension of the social relief grant, which is at 350 Rand. And I think that's certainly going to be one of the things that they're going to continue leaning in and showing, in terms of the efforts they're making. I think they're also going to talk about the enterprise relief, I think 1.4 billion Rand fund for small and medium enterprises that were affected by the looting in the KZN and Gauteng area. I think those are some of the social points of emphasis that are going to be made. I think we're going to have a number of critical points from an SOE point of view. We've heard from CEO Andre de Ruyter that the energy transition for Eskom is going to cost somewhere between around 440 billion to above 500 billion. In essence, simply leaning to the fact that we're probably going to need to continue supporting Eskom for some time. And I think that's going to be a very big pressure point coming out of that as well.
Yeah. Now, with relations
I think we also need to hear.
Okay, sorry, Sifiso, I'm coming there. With relations to what needs to be done between now and next year when he delivers the budget in full, I mean, what are the markets looking for?
I think certainly
all right, big challenges there with that connection. Let's try and get Sifiso there on a better line. Unfortunately, that internet line letting us down. Sifiso, let's try. Maybe I think we've got you on a better line. You're saying what are the markets on the lookout for with relations to what needs to be improved between now and February?
So I think the markets will definitely be looking at the Reserve Bank and their approach to the inflation that's coming into the market. We've seen oil prices highest since October 2018, and that's going to create some pressure points from an inflation point of view. And so it's really going to be a question around of stability, financial stability, and I think that's going to come out from the Reserve Bank. That's one of the things. The second one is going to be around our financial reform program. So simply is that how well are we proposing to manage our money better, particularly going into the main budget in February next year. I think those are going to be a big spotlight, of course, around the wage pressures as well. And with inflation coming up like that, I think that continues to put an upward pressure point on wage expectations. And that's all a part of the fiscal reform programs that we're expected. I think that's one of the critical things. But poverty has come out as a big issue. Inequality has come out as a big issue. We're going to want to see what are we doing in terms of, changing our thinking in terms of solving that, because that's got a real developmental negative impact as well.
Revenue recovered, of course, faster than had been expected because of the commodity boom. But also we've had other things happening along the way, including the rebasing exercise around our GDP. How does this all play out and get interpreted by the minister?
No, I think, simply from the point of the minister, I don't think he should get too excited about better than expected revenue on the back of commodity prices. Primarily because our revenue base is still very concentrated. In South Africa, in excess of 60% of our corporate income tax collections comes from about 380 companies. And so it should be a question around broadening the tax base rather than milking, I think, the little bit that's there. We're seeing big contribution coming from personal income tax and dwindling coming from corporate income tax. So I think there's a big industry capacitation program that must also come into place, particularly from de-risking the tax base from the levels of concentration it currently has.
We know that popular phrase by the former finance minister, the cupboards are bare. We are literally spending more than we are getting, and we are going to borrow because of that. And so the debt is a little bit of a problem. Is our debt looking any better?
Certainly not. We are currently servicing at about 21 cents for every rand of tax revenue collected, and I think the expectation or the guidance is probably that's going to go a little bit up towards 23 or 24 cents. And so I think our cost of borrowing certainly going to increase. We've seen that on the back of our long-term bond yields. Those yield curves are steepening, and that usually a signature or a signal coming from investors that, in essence, they don't have enough confidence, and so they need to be compensated for higher levels of borrowing. And I think that's certainly going to come through on what we expect from higher debt levels, and particularly from a debt servicing point of view.
As part of the permanent expenditure that markets are looking out for is, of course, the question of the public sector wage bill. That war still has not been won. Clearly, politicians are unable to convince the workers, and therefore there's been no cut in the wages.
There isn't, and that was one of the big bets out of the previous budget. And so, when we expected to cut out of as much as 161 billion out of that, and we're not making too much progress, and now there's inflationary pressures that makes the wage negotiations even more difficult. We haven't seen much rationalizing in some of the kind of portfolios where people are managers without actually managing people within public sector. And that's certainly, I think, a big pressure point that's going to remain, big elephant in the room, because it is part of what the reform program or the pathway that was defined from a reform point of view that would get us to some level of fiscal stability. If we're not generating money there, and we still need to accelerate our social spending, where are we going to generate money elsewhere? And this is exactly why I was talking about the need to de-risk our revenue base from a corporate income tax point of view, to really start to think about how SMEs start to become better players in the economy in a way.
Right, Sifiso, appreciate your time. Let's leave it there for tonight. Economist Sifiso Skenjana giving us a preview of what to expect coming out of that midterm budget vote statement by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana.